considering that I love the 1995 Mortal Kombat as a guilty pleasure, and considering that I loved playing the games as a kid, and considering that even though it's hilariously awful, I loved Mortal Kombat Annihilation, of course I'm going to be watching this. Intro. Take one. Hey everyone. That was like the most half-assed high I've ever had. Today we're going to be talking about a film that I finally got to watch after it dropped on HBO Max a few weeks ago. But I only got to see it this past week. But I thought it was worth the wait. This is the 2021 film Mortal Kombat, directed by Simon McQuoid and starring Lewis Tan, Jessica McNamee, Josh Lawson, and many others. This new film adaptation of the classic, world-renowned game series follows a new character, Cole Young, an MMA fighter who finds himself seeking out the world's greatest fighters in order to defend Earth against enemies from Outworld in a battle for the universe. Now, in the very beginning of this review, I mentioned that I loved the Mortal Kombat games as a kid. Now, I will admit, I am not much of a gamer. I know that's shocking to hear, especially considering I'm a video editor and a programmer, but I'm not much of a gamer. I haven't played a video game in a very long time. But when I was a kid, I loved me some Mortal Kombat on SNES, and I played the hell out of it. And admittedly, the 1995 film is a guilty pleasure. And that's what I wanted out of this version. I wanted it to become that guilty pleasure movie that I would watch every great now and then, especially considering this one actually had an R rating. The 1995 version was a special effects extravaganza for 1995, and had a bunch of fight scenes, but it was kind of downtrodden by the PG-13 rating. And yes, I know, 1995 PG-13 is very different from 2021 PG-13. But regardless, you're talking about a film based on a game that was so controversial because there were ways that you could rip a character's spine out. You've got to go for the R rating on that. It's not going to be one of those films that has a deeper meaning or has brilliant characters or anything like that. It's a movie where I'm going in to basically laugh at some things that some characters say that are catchphrases from the games, and witness some really cool special effects and fight scenes along the way. And while I'm turning my brain off, it's going to be a fun type of turning my brain off. That's what I wanted going into this film. I wanted it to be a guilty pleasure experience. Now, as for how it actually went, well, I can't say that I didn't like it, but I can't say that I found it to be a great experience either. It was kind of in the middle, because there were some things that I really did love about it, but things that I felt like they could have done a lot better. Starting off with things that I actually really did like about the film, I really did love the effects. Some of them don't work quite so well, but honestly, a lot of them were just amazing, especially the ice effects that they have whenever Sub-Zero's on screen. Pretty much anytime Sub-Zero is on screen, the movie increases in quality by like 1,000%. Of course, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. And the fire effects that come up are really awesome as well, and some of the creature-based effects are surprisingly good, even though there are some that don't quite gel very well. But in general, I really liked the visual effects. And as for the fatalities, a lot of them are just about as gnarly as I expected. Some of them were really cool to look at. One particularly involving a spinning hat, and let's just say somebody coming into contact with that spinning hat. And if we're talking about positives here, I can't leave out Josh Lawson as Kano. Josh Lawson as Kano is pretty much stealing every single scene he's in. Anytime he's on screen, that's another thing that increases the movie's quality tenfold. Whenever he wasn't on screen, I wanted him to come back. And another thing that I do have to say that I really liked about the movie, the opening, like the first 15 minutes or so, is genuinely great. The first 15 minutes of this film give you an impression that there was genuine effort put into it, and it didn't feel like I was watching a Mortal Kombat video game adaptation. It looked like I was watching something almost like The Last Samurai or some shit. It felt like a completely different movie. Kinda like if Akira Kurosawa got a hold of some color film stock while filming The Seven Samurai and got a very huge budget for gore effects. And obviously not done in the 1950s. The first 15 minutes of this movie are probably my favorite part. And I'll admit that one of the fight scenes that happens toward the end is probably my second favorite part of the film. But the rest of the movie, while it's not all bad, has a lot of problems that I really think they could have done a lot better. For starters, when it comes to things that aren't that great, I mentioned going in that I wasn't expecting mind-blowing characters in this film, but even with that expectation, some of the characters in this film, well, I shouldn't even say some, because the ones that actually stand out are the exception. Most of the characters in the film, I really did not care about at all. And obviously, we're talking about Mortal Kombat. We know that they're going to kind of just name drop characters and assume that you know who they are. However, one of the things that I still find really weird is how the main character is not even somebody from the games, but he's treated pretty much like all of these other characters in that you don't really care about him that much. And while I don't really think that the guy who plays him does a very good job, apologies, Louis Tan, I know that you were not trying to, like, phone it in, but I blame the material more than Louis Tan. Some of the stuff that goes on in this film, not even the best actor in the world could pull off and make you care about them. Because this character really is kind of just a stock character who's been recycled very many times. But the weird thing about it is that this is supposed to be like the central main protagonist of the film, and it's also a character that was never in the games. If you're going to go that route, you have to make that character somewhat interesting. And I hate to say it, but they totally failed in that department. This character is not that interesting at all. Now, the other thing that I didn't really like very much about the film, which is one of the things that I actually wanted to watch the film for, were the fight scenes, oddly enough. There are some fight scenes in this film that actually stand out and are actually very well done. However, most of the fights in this film, not necessarily that they're badly choreographed, but they're just not well put together on film. Even though a lot of the fights are shot not super close up and it doesn't look like they're trying to hide bad moves in the way they're shooting the scenes, the way they kind of do a lot of quick cutting just takes it out of you. Most of the fights don't really feel like there's much at stake, which is a problem when you're talking about a movie where you're supposed to be following a bunch of people who are fighting to preserve the universe and not let it be taken over by Outworld. And while the fatalities that often happen at the end of some of these fight scenes that actually have fatalities are usually pretty good, all of the stuff that leads up to it is pretty bland. It's almost like they concentrated entirely on the fatalities and not enough on making the lead up to that fatality actually, investing. All of these fight scenes, I was more interested in going and looking at my phone instead of watching the fight occur. And while I guess you could contribute that partially to the pandemic and how it's made watching movies without looking at your phone a little harder since you're not going to a theater to do it, that is a problem if I'm watching a fight scene and I'm more interested in going to grab my phone and check my email than watching that fight scene. I'm not saying that the fight scenes are necessarily horrific. I've seen way worse, obviously. But when you're talking about Mortal Kombat and you're going for an R rating, you've got to make really good fight scenes. The ones in this film just aren't that good. I found this film kind of disappointing in some regards. I didn't find it necessarily bad, and I probably would watch it again, but a lot of the things that I actually did have high hopes for, even though I had low expectations in general, it didn't meet those hopes. And I have a feeling that I'm not going to be alone there. But anyway, I hope this helped you determine if you want to watch Mortal Kombat. If you haven't already, it's on HBO Max. Go check it out if you are so inclined. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and helps people who don't know about my content but would like to see content like this find my channel easier. And if you're new here and you want to see more of what I do, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified when I post a new video instead of just randomly finding one every great now and then, go ahead and hit the bell icon so you can actually be notified when I post a new video. And with that, have a good night, and I'll see you later.